Hello there. All right, so we did some inequalities in Unit 1, and we're doing some more in this unit. And like I did in Unit 1, there are specific steps that have to be completed to earn the points. Um, I do this, I've probably said it in class before, based on how I am supposed to grade the final exam. So I started taking that rubric on the final and then kind of putting it on other things. So all of these steps are graded independently. So if you don't do them, then you don't get those points. How well you do that individual step determines how much of the points you do get. So try to show your work in clear and understandable with enough detail, et cetera, et cetera. It really helps me grading because unless I can touch that mistake on the sheet of paper, I don't know what went wrong, and there's no partial credit. So trying to do this to help you get more points. Hello there. Let's take a look at this first example. So step 1, identify the critical values. And since it's already in factor form, you just look at each of the factors and solve. Pretty straightforward, like that. Step 2 is the number line. So we're going to draw a horizontal line. Awesome. And then mark each of those critical values like that. Also, we need to put those individual factors on the left column. We're doing a sign chart. So all we're going to do is take a value from each interval, plug it into the factor, and determine whether it's positive or negative. All right. Helpful thing might be to draw the grid lines. I didn't want to do it in PowerPoint, but I did it. Sometimes I do that by hand, especially when there's a bunch of those intervals and a bunch of factors. Helps keep it a little organized, like that. All right, so the next step is where we start actually plugging the values in and then determining whether that particular factor in that particular interval will be positive or negative, like that. So I've got a fun little grid there. So as you plug these in, whether you cube it, whether it's negative or positive, you cube it, it stays the same. This one is squared, everything is positive. The next one is cubed, so it's based on the critical value from that factor. Anything less than is going to be negative, and anything greater than is going to be positive. Likewise for all the other factors that have other numbers. So everything less than 4 results in a negative amount, and then greater than 4 will be positive. This is going to be only negative with the -8, and then positive for everything else. And in each column, below the interval, you're going to look at the quantity of negatives. And these are factors being multiplied. So when you multiply a pair of negatives, it cancels and it becomes positive. So if you just count the negatives, an even quantity results in a positive value. An odd quantity of the negatives results in a negative value. Like that. And now we can determine the answer, whichever of the inequalities that it might be. As an alternative, in Unit 2, you learned how to graph polynomials. So feel free, if that is better than the sign chart, go for it. It's all good to me, like that. All right, so this was our final row at the bottom, the result. So when we go less than, we're looking at the ones that say negative. And we got equals, so we'll have some square brackets. Notice the critical value 2, since it's equal to 2, we're not going to notate it in the interval notation. If you put square brackets where the parentheses are, you are going to lose some points because that's not completely correct. All right, greater than 0 are all the positives. And then we set it equal to it's going to be equal to that individual number 2, critical value of 2, and you can see I use the square brackets there. You can use the curly brackets for individual numbers, but I keep it consistent like that. Alrighty, so just a summary again, remember these 4 steps are there to help guide you into getting more points. Every step, how well did you accomplish that step? That determines the amount of points that you do. If you're doing something else, then the points are different. I did say you could graph it. That's a perfect alternative. And basically graphing, you got to determine the critical values to graph it. You got to determine the multiplicity, the end behavior, the y-intercept. So just like in Unit 2, when you graphed polynomials, all of those little bits and pieces are the show your work, like that.